Hi, I'm Justin.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to Game On.
This is our web show where we're going to be drawing upon our more than 40 years of combined gaming experience, both as players and in writing and running games.
We'll be sharing what we've learned over the years, things that work, things that don't work, to help you create a more intense, atmospheric, and exciting gaming experience.
For us, this isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. We live and breathe it. And we want to take what we've learned and are still picking up now and share that with you so that you can have more success and, most importantly, more fun.
And with that, we say, Game On. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about how you can take a store-bought adventure and make it your own.
Yeah, you know, when you're running a homebrew that you wrote yourself, personalizing it is easy. I mean, you put the elements into it that you want to have. You focus on the things you want to focus on.
Yeah.
But with a store-bought adventure, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, so Curse of Strahd is actually my favorite module that was written by Wizards of the Coast. I have many different notes and pages that I have with this. Lots of, as you can see, post-it notes. It's really weathered, pages are falling out. It's because it's my favorite module. But the thing is that if you keep on running it the same way, you want it to be different every time. And sometimes the best ways you can make things different is just to homebrew something yourself in here. You still take the same story, but you make it something that you helped create.
Yeah, you know, it's something, it's based on the original material, but a lot of times you may be working in an environment where you need to keep things more by the book, right? If you're working with an adventures league, in the case of D&D, and there's only a certain amount of things that you can change.
Yeah.
So you have to work within the constraints of the book, but there's still plenty in the margins that you can do to make something personalized, make it your own. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Exactly. I do believe actually one of the best ways to do that is something that you're really good at, and that's making your own memorable NPCs.
Yeah, you know, that's definitely one of my favorite things for any gaming system. And really what you can do with a book like this is they'll have lots of little sort of cookie cutter NPCs in there, little couple paragraphs of box text and some basic stats and so forth. And oftentimes those NPCs are put in there for one of two reasons, right? They're either there to further the plot or they're there to create an encounter. If it's a plot thing, they usually have to deliver some information to your party. So really all that character has to do, all that NPC has to do, is be a delivery device for that piece of information. The details of who they are may or may not be germane to that. If they're not, once you grasp what kind of information they need to deliver, you can then customize the rest of it. So one of the things I do is I have some well-developed NPCs that I've used in multiple storylines.
Okay.
And I've come to know them. I've written these characters, I've created these characters, I know their personalities, I know their mannerisms. And sometimes you can substitute those into key positions in your adventure.
That makes sense.
You know, if you've got a shopkeeper that is supposed to impart some plotline piece of information to your party, but you decide you don't want it to be a shopkeeper, you don't want it to be a generic guide.
Shopkeeper number one.
Yeah, look, you can substitute in another character that it's in a completely different environment as long as he delivers that same piece of information.
That's actually a pretty good idea. I like that idea a lot.
I love it because, again, after you've run a character a bunch of times, you know them. Like, I'll have his accent down, I'll have his sort of peripheral characteristics down.
Okay.
Whether he has a limp, whether he's a pirate, so he has a parrot on his shoulder, whatever the silly little details are, you know that character so well that you can fill the details in and describe them for your players in a much more lively and entertaining way.
So what it sounds like is that you're taking the crunch of what he needs to give you, but you're changing the fluff of it. So in other words, you're making it your own, but it's still delivering the information that the PCs need to keep going.
Yeah, look, in a module like this, he's got a job to do.
Yeah.
He's got to give you a piece of information, or maybe an object. Maybe he has something that your players are going to need to use later on in the story. So he's still got to serve his function.
Exactly.
You can't make the form overtake the function in this. But once he's done his core job, or once he's situated to be able to do his core job, all of that extra stuff, all that extra flavor, you can definitely add and embellish and have a lot of fun with it. And your players will too, because if they know you love a character, that you're invested in an NPC and you perform it for them, they get more invested in the storyline too. They develop relationships and reactions to your NPCs that are much richer and more fulfilling as players, right?
Yeah. Is there ever a time when you've decided that you wanted to keep a stock NPC as opposed to making a new one?
Oh, sure. I mean, look, sometimes the encounter simply isn't important enough to add a lot of embellishment to.
Fair enough.
Or maybe the guys who wrote the module did a fairly decent job with the NPC, and so really only you have to color in a little extra shading to a character.
Yeah.
But you don't have to completely reinvent the wheel.
Okay, I like that idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorites, and when you're running a game, you don't necessarily have that same ability all the time to improvise and play.
Oh, yeah.
But running an NPC with character and with flavor and with personality is your opportunity to be a little bit of what the players get to do full time with their characters, and I love it.
So it sounds like you're taking something that was boring and generic and just making it a lot more fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully it's not completely boring and generic. I mean, something like Curse of Strahd, there's some pretty good, rich NPCs in there already. But not everything is solid gold material. Some of it needs a little help. And if you're running a game that you've run for 4 or 5, or in Justin's case, 23 times, you want to change stuff up just to keep yourself entertained too. So
it's a big thing. You gotta keep yourself entertained because your PCs and the players themselves are going to know when you are getting into it, and the most that you get into it, the more that they will get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is a cooperative enterprise, right? Your players are going to play off of you. It's improvisational, and you pick up a vibe off of people. So if the person running the game is having fun with it, your players will have more fun with it too. They'll get inspired by you, and you'll get inspired by them. So you all want to be sort of generating more energy, and one of the ways to do that is with rich NPC characters. But that's not the only way. Obviously, there's some other things that we can do. What do you want to talk about next? You want to do settings?
Yeah, I think we can talk about the settings that something is in. So, a lot of these modules are set in a world that Gary Gygax for a long time ago that everyone seems to know.
Well, I mean, let's
Forgotten
talk about
Realms.
Curse of Strahd, right?
But Curse of Strahd, yeah, I mean, it still technically takes place in the same world as Forgotten Realms, but it's its own micro world, and that's what's so cool about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, this is why I love Curse of Strahd so much, is that one of the reasons, at least, is because it's such a micro world, and a lot of people might have even heard of Curse of Strahd. They might have heard of Ravenloft, even if you're not like a gamer who's played it. You might have at least heard of it, and it's quite iconic. But the thing is that it's not huge. You don't have to worry about what this king is doing over in this land and what king is doing in this land. You can create this world that's already there, and then you just dig deeper into it. You add yourself a lot more ways of describing things.
I actually think the firmer borders of a setting like Curse of Strahd, and we don't want to focus too much on this particular adventure, though it's Justin's favorite. These concepts apply to all kinds of modules and in multiple gaming systems. This is not specific to D&D.
Exactly.
But having a limited scope to the world, some firm borders to it, actually can help focus you and keep your attention and your eye on the essentials, right? You're trying to build texture into a scenario and an environment for your players. So the little details matter. Just like with personalities with NPCs, settings, details matter.
And what's really interesting is when I'm really trying to get really deep into the detail of something, I normally give off about 3 bullet points, but I like the players to get the same senses that their PCs are. So you help describe the PCs might taste copper in the air. So a player would know what that means. Like they would say, "Oh, I know what that's. It might be blood." Or I hear the clicking of something. It sounds like the talons on like a piece of wood. Mm-hmm. And if your PCs hear that, you want to tell your players that they hear that, but you want to make sure that it's framed in a way that your players can actually take it.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because we tend to be visually focused as humans, and certainly when you're going off of material in a gaming in a module, they talk about what you see.
Definitely.
And look, that's still absolutely essential information that you got to give to your players. But we all have 5 senses, and sometimes those subtle and rich textures to create a scene or create the feel of a situation are fleshed out by hitting on the other senses. Now, look, I'll be honest with you. Taste is a rare one in gaming, right? Like
it is.
You say you taste copper in the air, and that definitely can set a tone. But that's probably one that's going to come up the least often.
It does come up a lot less than mostly everything else does. It's definitely hearing, sight, feel too.
Smells and sounds you can add sort of texture to. Hey, this room smells moldy or it smells dusty, so it implies that it's poorly maintained. So maybe people haven't been there in a long time. I mean, that's obvious stuff. Like you go into a tomb and it's not going to smell minty fresh in springtime. Like,
no.
So look, everybody gets that concept. We're not telling you anything new with that. But remember that when you're customizing a store-bought module, to work with the other senses that they maybe don't touch on in that couple of paragraphs of box text, right? They tell you what the wall looks like, but they don't tell you what the air smells like.
Yeah.
So add that stuff. It's not going to change fundamentally the adventure.
No, but as both players and game masters, you're both trying to get yourselves into the world. You want to be immersed. You don't want it to be immersion breaking. You want it to be immersionful. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no. So you're selling it.
Yeah.
You're selling it to your players, and you got to believe it yourself.
Exactly.
In order for it to feel authentic to your players. So that's what we're going for.
Yeah. Another really good way of changing up some things about modules pre-written is changing what kind of encounters you're going to get.
This was one of your favorites.
Yeah. So I'm not going to name any specific modules, but specifically for D&D. But this can go for any pre-written modules from any other game systems. Sometimes the random encounters in there don't seem to make sense for where you are or what is going on around you. It was a wyvern, I think it was, that you guys came up on, and it was just a random encounter. And it's like, so a big, giant, almost dragon-sized flying beast, and you just like happenstanced onto it.
Like you did.
So the way that I get around that is it's still random. Is that I like to do random rolls beforehand.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this a time or two just between us. Is Justin has a tendency to pre-roll random encounters. They're still random, but you set them up ahead of time so you can do a little bit of extra prep for them. So they.
Yeah, I mean, you don't just happen upon a warband of orcs. You might see their tracks, or you might hear them in the distance. You would know that they're around. Something obviously bigger is a lot more easier to see, But like, you don't just come upon a wyvern and be like, oh, hey, you know.
Well, and that's sort of the plausibility of encountering a particular foe. You pre-roll your stuff. I weight my random tables, right? I make them random, but not completely random. I put probability factors built into my tables so that if I'm in a place where there are a lot of goblins or orcs, you know what? If I roll a d20, 15 out of 20 is going to be these creatures that you're likely to find in that environment. And it's only the really oddball stuff gets a 1 or a 2 out of 20 chance of happening. We don't want to completely eliminate that as a random encounter, but at the same time, you don't want to be constantly having to pull in every bizarre page from the monster manual in and explain to somebody why in the middle of a sweltering hot jungle you just encountered some sort of an ice monster.
Yeah.
It's just not what you want to do.
Why is there a polar bear in the jungles of Chult?
Yeah. No good.
Yeah. Circus.
So yeah, you pre-roll.
Yep.
So that you can prepare the story to plausibly include what you've encountered. I slide the scale around to sort of give the thing much more of a plausible explanation. And it's whether it's combat or a role-playing opportunity, you can do this kind of stuff.
Exactly, because some random encounters might actually be a good way to get in a side quest or something. And that's actually another good way to make the module a little bit more unique to you, is if you write your own side quests in there. Yep. And using these interesting NPCs, maybe make more than you need, and then throw them in to help you segue into another type of side quest or something. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of turn these modules through any different systems and just make it yourself. Because I mean, there's pre-written modules for Pathfinder and for Traveler and for Call of Cthulhu.
Oh my God, we're not going to list all the gaming systems because, look, between the two of us, we've probably played 30 systems, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. They all have our personal favorites and whatever. But these concepts, for the most part, will work for any system. Although certain systems lend themselves more to one style or one technique or another. There may be something like Traveler that has a table for everything.
It does.
And if so, you don't have to create random encounters tables necessarily from scratch, because somewhere in that tome is going to be the table that you need. So really what you want to do is pull on the resources of a particular system, use its advantages and its strengths to the best of your ability, and then through your own creativity sort of augment its inherent weaknesses. Or even, you know what, if you get good enough and experienced enough with a certain system or set of systems, you can steal something from one book and transpose it into another. I've done that a ton of times.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But I think that what we've discussed is a really good jumping off point. It's a really good starting point for people who want to make their own parts of their own these pre-bot modules.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And this is plug and play stuff in the sense of you can do it any of these techniques that we've talked about independent of one another or interlaced with each other. So you want to create 3 custom NPCs to put into an otherwise box stock module, and that's the extent that you want to personalize. That's easily done. But if you want to go whole hog and redo settings and integrate a bunch of NPCs and have your random counters to when you encounter an NPC, all of that's fair game too. Like, you can do as much or as little, and you know, we don't want anybody to feel intimidated by the prospect of personalizing a module. We want to make this sort of give you ideas to play off of, and you pick and choose what you like.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you take what you're comfortable with, and the cool thing is that the more you do it, the more and more you'll want to do it.
Oh yeah, it becomes organic, it becomes intuitive, and you end up embellishing and making a story more fun and more creative without even really having to think about it.
So that's pretty much, I think, the best way to go about doing this.
Yep.
Is what we're doing now.
And there's a million other things you can do to customize module. We are by no means listing you the sum total, but we're doing some of the major concepts here. some of the easiest things for people to do, some of the most get the most bang for your buck out of putting the time in and the effort into to make a module your own.
Yeah.
So.
And you know what I think? I think we all need to go out and game on.
Yeah.